Hi, I'm Heather Bell. I'm a writer and a speaker, and I'm here with Trisha to invite you to get naked. Okay, we said it a little too together that time. Okay.
Funny too.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Get naked. Okay, we can do this. We can do this. We're here to invite you to
Get naked.
All right. So yeah, we're here to invite you to get naked. As I said, I am Heather Bell, and I am here with Trisha today. In all sincerity, we are inviting you on this journey of Get Naked. And but you might want a little explanation as to what that is. Get Naked is a series that God put on my heart to share with others how to go through this process. So Get Naked is the process, the stripping away, the releasing of everything you were never meant to wear. Maybe you wore it too long. You know, Lord said, take it off, but you're still wearing it. And then it's just learning how to sit in that vulnerability and the nakedness when all that's been stripped away. And then next would be learning how to listen to the Lord saying, you know, what am I supposed to wear? What would you outfit me in? So Get Naked is just a process, and it's a journey, and it can sound a little scary. Anytime we hear naked, we want to run. I don't know, we say we want to run, but I think when you heard you might could join something, Get Naked, you were a little excited.
I just say, like, it's not something that you say in the church. And so you're like,
when I'm going around saying, hey, you want to get naked? And we're talking about it at
church.
Just
like piques your interest a little bit.
So we do recognize that this may sound a little out of your comfort zone or maybe something new. And when we've been discussing that getting naked sounds a little scary, I was reminded of a story, not a story really, it's my story of my childhood, that I had this insane fear of getting naked by tornado. So I was always so afraid that a tornado would come through and rip me straight out of my house, deposit me in some tree somewhere, but I would be naked, you know, and I remember sharing this with another girlfriend and telling her the story. And she's like, Heather, that's ridiculous. That would never happen. And I'm like, I have seen that on the news. I know that I've seen some lady being rescued from a tree where they had to wrap her in a blanket or something. So, you know, I don't think it's ridiculous, but she made me, you know, she's like, you are crazy. And so, but you shared with me.
Yes. And so when Heather was telling me on the phone, I'm like listening to her story and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had that same fear, but with fire. Like, what if in the middle of the night I'm wearing something inappropriate and then their fire happens and then I'm outside in this inappropriate thing or I'm not dressed. So yeah.
We're just going to say naked. So you don't even want to say it right now. I'm naked. So yeah, I think most of us, I'm not going to speak for everybody. I think most of us here Get Naked and we think it's some forced, scary event, like some traumatic thing. But we're here to invite you along a process that's not necessarily an easiest journey, but you'll discover that you're not alone in the journey. You'll discover that there's tools and that it's a safe place. And, you know, really it's by God's design. He never meant for us to walk around, you know, this heavy. We ourselves have gone through this journey. And, you know, Trisha, going through the Get Naked journey, what does that meant or look like for you?
I think the Get Naked series came along at a time that I was feeling really alone and isolated, and Heather had invited me to be a part of the series. And when I started going through it, it started making me feel connected in a way I hadn't felt connected in a while, and just showing me those parts of my life that needed to be stripped away and that God could just deal with. And then how to kind of, once you strip those things off, your tools and your explanations and the things that you were saying in your video series really just resonated with me on how to like put on the better things that God has for us. And so I think the series, even going through it a second time while you've been doing all the editing and everything, I just feel like even now, going through the process after a year and a half, I feel like it still resonates in my life now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just been transformative for me, and I know for a lot of other women as well.
So going into it, did you feel a little bit, we joked around, but did you actually feel somewhat nervous?
I was nervous because I'm like, what does this mean? What is it going to be? But also I knew that God was wanting me to just be around more women and to integrate into the purpose and the things that God has for us. And so hearing that God had put such passion in your heart for a series, and I wanted to be a part of it, just found a great opportunity to do that.
Now that you've been through it, can you say to other women, it definitely, wasn't easy, but it does feel safe?
Yeah, it felt very safe. You're just amongst people that you already know, or maybe even new people. But as you go through the process, you get to be vulnerable, and you have these people who just, they can understand what you're going through.
Well, it's really powerful when you're going through something like this where somebody else says, me too.
Yeah.
Or something that seems like so big in your mind.
Yeah.
Now when you've got somebody sitting across from you going, well, here I am worrying about tornadoes and being exposed on the 6 o'clock news. I feel ridiculous until you say, well, I've always had this fear that I'm going to be exposed to people by fire.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of, first responder events happening here, but it's just, I never want anybody to look at something like this and say that it's a forced, experience. This is truly an invitation that you could be drawn into.
Yeah.
And at the further that you're drawn into it, the further you realize you want to keep going. Because once you get a taste of a little bit of the freedom of not experiencing such heaviness, you want to take it all off. You want to say, Lord, I don't want to wear this anymore. What would you have for me?
Yeah, and it's not scary when you start the process. I feel like if you really just put yourself out there and just go through it, I feel like you're going to get so much from it. And I really just appreciate the heart behind it. And I feel like it's been powerful, and I feel like it can be powerful for a lot of other women. So I definitely encourage them.
Just for those that need detail, some people will feel way more comfortable, joining something if they have some detail. It's just session by session, going layer by layer, along with the Lord and the Holy Spirit to say, what needs to come off at this layer? What needs to come off at the next one? And now let's go deeper. And then together we look at how do we experience the stillness and sitting before the Lord and saying, I don't want anything between you and I. Here I am. Lord, I surrender. What would you have for me? What purpose do you have for me? What do you want me to walk in? So for me, it was not only had I walked it out myself for several years and gone through the process, for me, it was another level of healing to experience it with other ladies. So I appreciate you sharing your, a little bit of your journey. I have other women that have gone through it, and I asked them, recently, I said, could you tell me what this did for you? Why would you recommend, Get Naked to other people? What did it do for you? And so I will share. TW said, Get Naked helped her see how insecurities were holding her back. So I think that's very valid.
Yes.
I could even relate to that. That's been a lot of my journey, is realizing where I was being held back by fears. She also said, Get Naked is for any woman who experiences regrets tied to their past. And as we'll talk about in the series, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
And a lot of people could relate to walking around with too many regrets, taking up space in their minds and their emotions. Okay, and you had somebody, who were you sharing about?
JR said, Get Naked opened my eyes to see that I was wearing something past its season, and it was time to let it go because I was being called to something different.
LH shared, the process of Get Naked revealed things I've held on to that God was ready to help me let go of. And I appreciate her saying that God was ready to help me let go of. This is a process that we cannot do alone, that we're going to be totally, dependent on Him to walk it out. Her encouragement to other women, Get Naked is for you if you are tired of hiding behind hurt, shame, and excuses that keep you from stepping into freedom. So you and I shared a little bit about what Get Naked meant for us. And then, we looked at what the other women shared and told us. We heard their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
What resonates with you now that this has been talked about?
Well, it also brings up insecurities, past insecurities. When you were saying something about, it really helped kind of highlight some of those insecurities. And I feel like as women, we deal a lot with insecurity. Also, trying to figure out what our calling is in life. And then, even what JR said, she said it just specifically helped her kind of find where she's supposed to be and to take off those layers of clothing that weren't serving her. And I think sometimes the insecurity comes from clothing yourself in things that are not important or shouldn't be there anymore. And so,
or maybe clothing your things that are familiar.
Yeah.
Like we'll get further into that in the series, but sometimes we can just be wearing something that's been working for a long time. God was in it. It's familiar. It's good. And it can cause a lot of insecurities to rise up when you need to take that off because it's time to step into something new.
Yeah.
And many times we'll delay stepping into what he's calling us to do because of the fear of what will life be like? What will I be like? Am I enough if I take this off? There's so many levels. There's so much to that to unpack. And so I have not yet met one woman who can't list off insecurity after insecurity. And to imagine a life where we're not walking around wearing those anymore and we're able to step into what, God's called us to do, who he created us to be in a confident way. He never wanted us walking around terrified or ashamed or feeling inadequate to do what he's called us to do.
And to recognize there's seasons for everything that we go through. And like you said, I think sometimes you are in a specific ministry at one point and then God calls you to something different. And sometimes we fight that and we don't realize it's time to move into something new. And God's like, you're done with that. Let's move into a different area. And so I feel like the whole series can really help women relate to whatever season they're in. And it doesn't matter if, even like all the seasons, I feel like it's a process. You don't have to remove everything all at once. It's a process of removing these things and just realizing there's whatever's important in your life now is what God's going to deal with. And then he's going to go in layers. It's not going to be all at once. And so you don't have to be scared or afraid that, wow, this seems overwhelming. This is too much for me. He's going to do it gently because he loves us and he wants the process to be gentle.
Well, while you're talking, I had a couple images come to mind. And when you were saying that you don't have to take it off all at once, I mean, it's not the streaking across the ball field. It's not like, and sometimes honestly, I want to just have this done, but it is submitting to his process and his timing. And then the other image I had to come to mind is we talk a lot about, especially because this is within the realms of the church and in small groups and so forth, we talk a lot about the areas of ministry, but we have other elements of our life that seasons can come to an end. And I ran into someone today who is in that trying to get used to the empty nest season. And it's very difficult to walk into that. And that requires you to take some things you've been wearing over the years. They were God-given. They were wonderful. They served their purpose, but it's not looking the same as it used to. And it's very unfamiliar to enter this new season. So it's not, I don't want people to only think that Get Naked is about what my role is in a church, you know what I'm saying, or ministry. This covers so many levels of life. It covers you in your relationships, you in your career, you in your parenting, your marriage, your ministry. This is all of it. You're not meant to walk around heavy in all of these areas. There is a freedom. We so often think we have to wait to get to heaven to experience any kind of freedom. Like, oh my gosh, there will be no more pain. There will be no more suffering. And we are not free from those things on this earth. I mean, we know that. We were going to walk through trials that are attached to just being in the world and on earth. But I don't think we should be living with the mindset that only freedom and only joy and only life abundant can happen once we're there.
Yeah.
We're promised that, here also, but many of us are not walking around in the promises that have been given to us. So
that's good. So now that you've seen our hearts, I would encourage you to get in a group, do this on your own, or do it with a friend. And we cannot wait to see what God does in your hearts through this series. So
let's get naked.
Saying naked a lot makes me flush.